Can you hear me now? Had a fill-in-the-blank handout. I had several people said that you like that, and so we might do that more often and treat this more like a class as we go. Last week, that was 2 weeks ago, last week, we went to the area-wide, and I appreciate the elders for letting us do that. I appreciate the congregation. Zach did a great job. I usually go online and listen to whoever is filling in for me. And for the last several, actually, I think 3 area-wides, we've had a packed bus. Last Wednesday we had a packed bus. The one before that we had caravanners even because we had more than a bus load. One before that we had a packed bus, and so that's great. Now I know that some people, I've talked to some people about this, and they say, well, where are they at tonight? And a lot of times our younger people just don't come back on Sunday night oftentimes, and that's the way that it is. We want to encourage them to do so, but I also want to encourage us not to basically judge their spiritual maturity based entirely on whether or not they come back on Sunday night. But we do want to, of course, encourage them to do that. This morning we had, sometimes I don't understand, I don't see what all goes on up here, and so I saw somebody walk out this morning, and I just assumed, well, he don't like my preaching. I mean, that's what you assume a lot of times, but I'm joking. But anyway, I've just been talking about, some things that are kind of touchy, and this guy gets up and walks out, and I think, well, okay. I hope he's not offended, but if you're offended, then you're offended by the truth, I guess. But it wasn't until later that I found out what all happened, so we had a little bit of an incident. And it was handled in a very professional and a very loving way, very thorough way by our security crew. And so thank our security crew, okay? Probably all of them had a part of that, in watching monitors and communicating and stuff with each other. But I will call David Higgins out also, because David actually approached someone who was in a very bad mood that he does not know, that looked like he could be sketchy, and he actually approached him out in the parking lot, and you never know what's going to happen when you approach someone like that, and he did so anyway, and I appreciate that. And when I said something to him about it, he said, it's no big deal. I said, yeah, it is a big deal. You just don't ever know. And so I, for one, appreciate all you guys for what you do, and I know the congregation does. Y'all make sure that they know that. But since all that happened, Judy Thrasher said, I didn't hear a word that you said this morning because of all that commotion. So because of that, I'm going to preach the sermon that I preached this morning. Y'all can thank Judy for that, or you can blame Judy for that, whichever one you want to do. We're going to think about and talk about influencers tonight. And maybe I need a younger audience for this. I don't know, not necessarily, because you know the term influencers. You know there's a lot of influencers out there, and that oftentimes refers to those on social media. And I'm going to start off by defining that. So an influencer is in contemporary usage, the term frequently refers to a social media influencer, also known as an online influencer or simply influencer, is a person who builds a grassroots online presence through engaging content such as photos, videos, and updates. And this is done by using direct audience interaction and to establish authority and authenticity, and then it goes on to talk about that. And so you have these influencers that are out there in social media that have millions. It amazes me that has millions and millions of followers. I want us to think about, who are we allowing to be our influencers, whether it's online, and yes, that's a part of it. Who do we allow in our life to influence us? And then secondly, I want us to think just a little bit about, who am I influencing? In Matthew chapter 5, of course, Jesus there in the Sermon on the Mount talks about us being, and he says talking to his disciples, he says, you are the salt of the earth. That gives flavor, that gives that enhances and makes better. We are to make the world a better place. And then he says, you are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, so let your light so shine among men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. And so we are to be, of course, influencers, but we also need to be very, very careful. And I don't think we get to an age to where we're not influenced. I think we need to be very careful about who we allow to influence us. In 1 Corinthians 15:33, it says, do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good morals. Good habits, as some translation says, but I like morals. And I like that it starts by saying, do not be deceived, because obviously there's plenty of people out there that have deceived themselves into thinking that I can be around it, and yet I'm strong enough, I'm my own person. If you hang around trash, you what? You become trash. That's what Dad drilled into my head. And so we need to be very, very careful about who we allow to influence us. So you have your handout ready. Romans chapter 12 and verse 2, as you well know, says, do not be conformed to the world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so who do we allow to influence us? Who do we allow to speak truth or error into our lives? And are we being the kind of influence that we should be, that is, that salt and light to other people? And so your outline is extremely basic. I know that, and I'll do a better job of that in the future. But it says 3 musts to seeking godly counsel for being a good influencer and surrounding ourselves with good influences. So number 1 on your outline, my relationship must include people I trust to speak godly wisdom into my life. Who do I choose to spend time with in my life that is influencing me? Sometimes we do not have any choice whatsoever about who we are around, having to do with, of course, school days and work and situations like that. I get along with everybody. I mean, I always have. In school, I was friends with everybody. I just get along with everybody, and I've never had a problem with that. Well, back years and years ago, I started surveying with this guy that was different than anybody I'd ever been around. And this guy was going to be a thorn in my side, and he was a very, very smart aleck type and was always right and had to be in control about everything. And so he worked in the office, went out in the field every now and then. I'm the party chief in charge of everything that's done in the field. And so I know how to do my job, for crying out loud. But the guy, when he would go out with me, he's 10 years older than I am, he would commence to telling me how to do my job. And Gary, there's more than one right way oftentimes. And when we talk about surveying, there's more than one right way, and it would drive me nuts. And he and I butted heads. And I mean, I'm talking about in each other's face. I mean, I could not stand. Don't tell me how to do my job. Well, that's been a long, long time ago. Well, I still survey 1 day a week, and sometimes I work on the weekend, so sometimes 2 times a week, but usually 1 day a week, usually on Mondays. Well, this past Monday, we had the funerals. And so I decided to survey on Tuesday. Much needed to get outside and get away. Well, this guy has changed over the years, and he will go out with me sometimes on that 1 day, sometimes he doesn't. And he's a lot different. Bless her heart. I remember those days. I remember those days being a kid. And anyway, but this guy has changed a lot over the years. And he is not so much a control freak, not so much a smart aleck. And when we work together, we work well together. Not Tuesday. Not Tuesday at all. He reverted back to his old self, and he was a smart aleck all day long and told me all day long what to do, and I was about to snap. I just could not take it anymore. And that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes you don't have a choice with who you're around. And what got me through it and to keep from killing this guy was I kept telling myself, one day, it's 1 day, I will not be here tomorrow. I will not be around this guy tomorrow or the next day or the next day. And so just let it go in one ear and out the other. And that's what got me through it. Sometimes we don't have a choice about who we are around. But those outside of work, we do have a choice. And certainly when we go online and we go flipping through our social media platforms, we do have a choice about who we follow and who we allow to influence us. The proverb writer Solomon says in chapter 13 and verse 20, "He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed." That just basically is saying, if you want to be wise, surround yourself with wise people. If you want to be foolish, then surround yourself with a bunch of idiots, and you'll have a difficult time. I can remember in school, and we've all been there with kids, with our kids in school, Alex got to where he was kind of hanging around is it emo and gothic or goth or whatever? Yeah, with all the black apparel, the black fingernails, and the black makeup. I'm talking about guys, doing that, and the whole music that went along with that. And he started trying to gravitate towards that. Well, Steph and I didn't want that, of course, and so we put our foot down and said, "You're not being around so-and-so. We know what he's like," and thank goodness, he started going with the band crew. And that was a much, much better group, and so he came out of that. But what the proverb writer is teaching us is that this is not just something for children. It's not just something for kids, but it's something that is for each and every one of us, because this principle is true no matter how old you are. We need people in our life that is going to influence us in a good and positive way. And notice what he says there. He says the companion of, what's that word? Fools will be destroyed. Hilda, what is a fool? Wednesday, we're studying Proverbs in the back. Most of you come to Wednesday class, and we were looking at a passage that talks about fools, and it was funny because Penny said and Amy said, "You didn't say that word in the Malone house. That was a cuss word." And that Amy was recalling one time, or maybe Penny was, where Amy told on Penny, I think it was, and told her daddy that, "Oh, Penny said the F word." Fool. Not the other F word, but it was funny. And the thing is, I understand that because my household was the same way. You did not say fool. You didn't call anybody fool. You didn't say fool. And I understand that. In Matthew chapter 5 and verse 22, there in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "Call no man a fool." And so that's where that came from. The idea, as Danny was doing a good job teaching in his class this morning, is empty-headed, and it has to do with someone that has no value whatsoever. And so how dare you call God's creation of no value, of no use? And so that's the idea. But the teaching here is obviously that the companion of fools will be destroyed. A fool is someone, if you look at Proverbs 12 and verse 15 and allow the proverb writer to define what fool is, it says, "The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he who heeds counsel is wise." And so therefore, a fool is someone who thinks he's right in his own eyes all the time. Someone who is not willing to seek advice and counsel from someone who is wise. Bill Hybel, who started the Willowbrook Community Church back in 1975 or 76 that grew to thousands and thousands. No, don't agree with everything that he believes or teaches, but very, very charismatic and very spiritual, I will say, and I do believe in a lot. It's kind of like what I said this morning. Don't disregard everything someone teaches because we disagree with one thing, okay? Take the good, know the truth so you can differentiate between what is right and what is wrong, what is truth and what is error. Well, this guy is also an author, and this is one of the things he says in one of his books, and I agree with it 1,000 times over, having to do with influence. He says, and I quote, "If we are committed to follow God's path and growing in wisdom, goodness, discipline, and truth, when then we should intentionally surround ourselves with people who exhibit those qualities. As our friendship with those people grows, so will our character and pursuit of godliness. That seems to be common sense, right? So surround ourselves with good, godly people. That's why we try to encourage the F word, fellowship. We need to have good fellowship with brethren. And so it's okay to be friends with people outside the church, but we need to have strong relationships within the church. Good people that are going to speak truth into our lives. Be surrounded with people that are going to be good influences. Number 2, I must be willing to seek input from others in my life. It's not enough to just have those godly friends. That's great and everything, but we must also seek input from them, not ignore them or think that we know it all. Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it?" The heart is the mind. And he's saying that it is desperately wicked. It will lead you in the wrong direction if you allow it to. It is a warning against being led by emotions and feelings alone. And so we need to be very careful about that. Don't make decisions on an island. Don't think that you know everything. Seek advice when you're going to be making decisions. And this is something that I do oftentimes in making big decisions, is I do a pros and cons on a list, and then I start asking the people that I respect and the people that I know will tell me the truth, my dad being one of them. Don't make decisions on an island. Don't trust yourself to just be led by your feelings and emotions. Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 18 says that pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. That gives us the reason why we do not seek counsel oftentimes, is because we think that we know it all. You know, pride, arrogance, I don't want to humble myself and let people know that I actually need some help. I can wing this on my own. No, we need to be humble enough not only to surround ourselves with good godly people, but to actually be humble enough to go to them and say, "Hey, can you help me with this? Will you listen and hear me out and maybe give me some advice? Will you help me with this? Will you pray with me?" We prayed with somebody just a little bit ago. A bunch of guys holding hands and praying. That's powerful, is it not? That's a good thing to do. We try to help one another out. In Proverbs chapter 18, verse 1, says, "A man who isolates himself seeks his own desire, but he rages against all wise judgments." He isolates himself. I don't need anybody. I don't need any advice. I don't need any help. That is a foolish man. Let's not be like that, think that we know it all. Number 3, I must be teachable. So it's not just surrounding myself with good people, it's being willing to go to them and seek advice, but I must be teachable. Proverbs chapter 12 and verse 15 says, "The thoughts of the righteous are right, but the counsels of the wicked are deceitful." Proverbs chapter 12 and verse 1, "Whoever loves instruction loves knowledge, but he who hates correction is stupid." So it's just that blunt, right? And so we need to be teachable. We need to surround ourselves with good godly people. We need to be willing and humble enough to go to them to ask for advice, and then we need to be teachable. In other words, don't let it go in one ear and out the other. When somebody gives you good sound advice, use it. Put it to practice in your life. And so let's be careful about who we surround ourselves. Brethren, we don't get to the point in our lives to where we are so spiritual and we're such spiritual giants that we cannot be influenced by others. Never think that you get to that point of maturity or that age, because you do not. Be careful about your company, obviously. Be careful about who you surround yourselves with. Be careful about your friends, and be careful about your online influencers. Because the thing is, oftentimes we will choose people in our life to be friends that are good people, and we won't surround ourselves with evil people, but we won't hesitate maybe to go online and follow somebody that is not a good influence because so many people are following them and nobody else is going to know that I'm following them because it's just me and my little phone. Be careful about that. Be very, very careful about who you allow to influence you. Do you need prayers of your brethren tonight? If so, let us know while together we stand and sing.